Hey Bison fans, add a little green in your wallet with the NDSU debit card from Gate City Bank. For every card ordered, Gate City Bank donates $10 to NDSU. Get your Gate City Bank Bison debit card today at gatecity.bank/bison or instantly at any location. Gate City Bank, for a better way of life. Member FDIC. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank with the Forum's Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo from WDAY. North Dakota State football into a bye week. Missouri Valley Conference play looming next Saturday. The Bison are 3-0, which we'll get to in a bit. It's a busy college football weekend in the FCS, notwithstanding the Bison, UND, and South Dakota State aren't playing. There are some interesting matchups that if you follow FCS football to keep tabs on. I wanted to start a story that, for those that follow Bison athletics, they've seen what's going on over the last couple days. Really sad story involving one of NDSU's all-time great women's basketball players, Rachel Otto, who is sedated right now in the hospital, suffering from what's called locked-in syndrome. Kolpack, I know you wrote about this. You covered all those amazing teams in the early to mid-'90s, and just visiting with a couple of Rachel's former teammates yesterday, just heartbroken on what's going on.
There's no other way to put it. Yeah. Really, words have no description for it. But, Rachel Otto was a player who is still number 8 all-time in North Dakota Class B girls basketball scoring leaders, and came to NDSU as a pretty hotshot player. I mean, she at New Rockford was as good as they got. Really good scorer, but she knew her role. I mean, there were so many good players and great players on that team that she didn't have to score. She knew that. She did the other things, she a lot of steals,
the
assists.
Facilitator.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it takes a certain person to check your ego at the door when you get here and say, I'm not going to be the leading scorer. Because you had Lynette Mund, you had Casey Morlock, averaging over 19 points a game, All-American. You had Lori Roofs, good player. I mean, Jen Rademacher was a good shooter and player, and kind of similar player and style to Rachel. So as tough as they come, and I think she missed her first year. I don't know if it was a knee injury or something, but didn't play her first year. Redshirted and tough as nails, and that'll serve her well.
Thoughts are to her, and the unbelievable part about especially the Bison women's basketball alumni, how they come together. We see it each year. The Jorias welcome them back, and it's been a really neat deal because every year that list gets bigger of former players that come back.
Yeah, Jory's doing a good job of that too.
But they really have embraced on this, whether they played with Rachel or not, from the Division I era to obviously her era, and it's inspiring to see. Just wish it wasn't over something like this.
And Rachel wouldn't want this attention. She's a very private person, and I know the players are going to get together by themselves and do some sort of prayer vigil, but they don't. Rachel's not one that would want this attention,
Thoughts to her and her family right now for what's going on there. There's no easy segue to move on to the fun and games. We'll try to do that here. As I mentioned off the top, the Bison are off this week. 3-0, wins over Eastern Washington, Maine, and Central Arkansas. The way they've done it has been thoroughly impressive to me. Now they get set for Missouri Valley play. University of South Dakota lying in wait. Coyotes are off this week as well. They're 1-2. Give me a couple things that have either surprised you, impressed you, stood out. Anything for the first couple games, 3 games of the season.
First of all, the 49-31 win over Central Arkansas was like 49-17. The fact the Bears kept their starters in till the end, I think was probably a little annoying. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Your star running back, you have a whole conference season and a shot at playoffs here, and you leave your star running back in till the end.
Puzzling to me. Yep.
Against a team that can hurt you.
Correct.
Amazing to me with that. But that aside, so the defense has given up an average of 16 points a game. I would say it's probably been more like 10, 11. I was
going to say about 10, I would say, right?
In reality, the starters have been really good. The defensive backs have been good enough. Certainly, Cole Wisniewski has played himself into a starring role. And I think the corners have been okay.
Yep.
There's a couple plays where, and you're going to expect that for an untested secondary, that there would be an occasional play they'd give up, and that's what's happened. But very impressed with this defense after 3 games. Now we'll see what happens in conference play. You got Aiden Bauman coming to the Dome, who's a load and a big quarterback, but that's college football. You're going to go against big players.
I think as well there may be reinforcements coming on the back end where young players, Darius Givens, Jaquise Alexander, who have not either been dinged up and just haven't been ready to go. Maybe with this bye week, we may get our first looks at each of those guys, Jeff, by the time South Dakota comes around. And Matt Entz and Jason Petrino are both super high on each of those guys to add some. And both of them are young. Both, I think, are redshirt freshmen that get in there and potentially help on the back end.
And let's call it like it is, too, with the new defensive coordinator. He's been good.
Really good.
I think Jason Petrino's been dialing up the right calls.
At the right times.
Sure feels that way.
Yeah, I think, and we've heard this from the players that they have said, new defensive coordinator, we're still learning it, but we like how he's called the game. And, I made some attention on this, that he's calling the game from up in the booth, which is just different. But just seeing him before the game, I've not seen a defensive coordinator do this. He was over at the 50-yard line during warmups watching Central Arkansas go through all of its. I have not seen a defensive coordinator do that before, and he was in the zone. This was an hour before kickoff, and he was watching Powell, which for good reason. I mean, he might be an All-American candidate by the time the season gets done, but I had not seen that before. He was locked in an hour before kickoff.
And on offense, Cam Miller, 50 of 62.
He's been fantastic.
81% completion percentage. 526 yards, 4 TDs, no they haven't turned the ball over.
No, he's been, if the Bison were going to go anywhere, we said this, Cam's going to have to play really well, and he has done that in spades. Saturday, going back and look at it, and I watched the film, Kolpack, that was his best game. That was his best game as a Bison, statistically, but just where the ball was, where it needed to be, with his running ability, that was his best game as a Bison.
Getting out quick.
Yeah.
Getting out quick.
Everything about it.
Well, the one incompletion was a throwaway, too.
It wasn't a drop. It was, And even that first pass he hit to Eli Green, we talked about this on Monday's video blog, hit him in stride. That was a bugaboo with Cam, that either the ball would just be out a little bit late, having a guy reach back for it, or it just be a little bit high. Even that incomplete pass he hit to Braylon Henderson that Braylon dropped, that was perfect against Maine. That was right where it needed to be.
I like the way that the offenses, Tyler Roll and Randy Hedberg have been splicing Cole Payton into the mix here, giving him more to the keys of the offense. I think that's been obvious.
And he had the drive to end the first half, engineered a couple of third down conversions, and scored a touchdown on that. That, you can't ask for anything more. If that's what we're going to see, I say bring it on. I like that, of sprinkling that in and actually have him throw the ball, which he did to Zach.
He's got to be a throwing threat, and I think he's demonstrated enough. I've seen enough. I think over the course of 3 games, he's 6 of 11, one drop, and he was sacked once and pressured. So I don't think that's indicative of his accuracies. To me, he feels like more 8 of 11, something like that.
19 guys have caught passes through the first 3 games. I can't remember ever a time where North Dakota State had that stat.
In a season.
Right?
Not even close.
19 guys have caught at least one pass so far through the first 3 games. That was a focus in the offseason, and boy, it has come to fruition here through the first 3 games of the season.
Well, they made good on that.
Yeah.
That was going to be the
emphasis. Focus.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they've certainly lived up to the words of what Matt Entz was one to do with Tyler Roll and Randy Hedberg in the offseason.
I'm going to look up how many players caught passes all of last year.
Oh gosh, can I guess before you have the answer? I'll say 9 or 10. 10. I'm going to go with final answer.
18.
Really? For the whole season?
Yep. But
we already have one more than that.
But half of those 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 guys were between 1 and 6.
Yeah. Well, they're already more. They already have more than that through 3 games. That was through 15 games last season because they played 15 last year. So that tells you alone where they're looking at so far. And the guys that have made plays when they've caught it. Mathis routinely has done that. Eli Green, I want to get to him in a second, I think is becoming the guy I've been asking about of who's going to be the dude in that spot. It might be him. Owen Johnson is another guy to keep an eye on. He keeps making plays.
He keeps seeing
him.
the field. Special teams, you're seeing number 4 out there more and more.
I'm telling you, keep an eye on him.
He was a walk-on, too.
He was, from Mankato. That's another one to keep an eye on here as the season gets going. Let's get back to Eli Green. Had the catch in the national championship game. 8 receptions for 155 yards so far this season. He has shown the ability to get away from defenders, pull away from defenders. I think he might be that guy, Jeff, that might be the breakaway, the burner, so to speak, in the wide receiver room.
5'11", 185 has shown the ability to get separation, which we didn't see a whole lot last year in the wide receivers, just getting away from defensive backs, getting open.
Yes.
Getting open. Just played in 12 of 15 games last year, was really not a factor.
I wouldn't say not till the second half of last season we finally got to see Eli be part of the offense. It was after Phoenix Sproles left, honestly.
And he wasn't really one of these all-state guys. I mean, you look at his bio, he was all-conference, big deal, all-metro, whatever. I mean, that's good, a lot of good players.
There's good players down there. Farmington kid from the Twin Cities.
But he was all-conference, first team as a junior.
Mm-hmm.
Senior year at 22 catches, 369 yards, 5 touchdowns. Nothing that really screams great or going to be an effective college player. Yeah. Obviously, he must have been at camp here, and they looked at him.
He did, and this was a place he was really intrigued by, despite knowing full well what their offensive tendencies are. And he said it to me. He's like, I got here, my freshman year, Christian Watson is here. I kind of attached myself to him, saw his practice habits, and I think for a lot of the young wide receivers that were here when number 1 was here, that did them a world of good to see exactly what Watson did to get through, to get ready to get on the field, for them to now follow.
And you also have to remember that he played his senior year during the COVID season, so shortened season. Players hard to get recognized. There really wasn't a fair evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, some games some teams only played a handful of games, like 4 or 5 games that fall. Some played even less than that, just because of illness or couldn't get a full team on the field.
Farmington, his freshman year, they were 1-8.
Yeah.
And 7-1 his senior year, but there was no playoffs.
Right.
And that's it.
Who knows what could have happened with that team that particular year. But he's shown it off. I'm really intrigued to see where he goes. Joe Stuffle continues to be a really, really good threat for Cam Miller to find. That's a guy I keep finding the ball somehow, some way. Find number 82, because he makes play. After he catches, he doesn't go down. He makes plays, Jeff. He runs over a guy or evades a tackle.
Yards after contact.
Yeah, he really does a nice job with that.
And that's what you want under your tight end.
Yep.
You want that the ability to get that first down if you catch it a yard or 2 short.
And now, as you mentioned, it's on to Valley play, and the conference has had I'd say a mixed bag of non-conference games. I don't think we're going to get a real great evaluation this weekend. The 3 games, Illinois State's playing Lindenwood, Western is playing Southern Utah, Missouri State is playing Utah Tech. We have the FBS win that Southern Illinois got over Northern Illinois. I don't know. How do you evaluate how the Valley has gone in non-conference play?
Not great.
I would think that's probably accurate.
Western's 0-3, yep. Missouri State's 0-2, Indiana State 0-3, Northern Iowa 1-2. Yep. Bad loss to Weber at home. Yep. Murray's is not going to be any good, 1-2, a cheap win somewhere there.
If they beat Presbyterian as a non-scholarship team. Illinois State had a terrible loss last week with Eastern Illinois. Yeah, I think it's probably a solid C.
Yeah.
Because the FBS win, I think, gets you a high grade, but everything else kind of brings it down in my mind.
Now, Southern Illinois on the other end of the spectrum, great start,
nice
FBS win.
And they beat SEMO on the road. That's a good win.
UND had a winnable game at Boise. Yep. That was a winnable game. They just stumbled in the first half. Yep. Should have had the lead at halftime. Yep. Boise's not good.
No.
Their quarterback cannot throw.
NDSU's got 3 quality wins, and South Dakota State beat a D2 and a non-scholarship team, sandwiched around a really nice win over Montana State, which I'm still not sure how to grade the Jacks through their first 3 games.
I don't think you can.
Yeah. It's an incomplete, you're saying?
Yes,
that's the issue?
That's a total incomplete.
All right. How about the Bison then? Their 3 wins? Because you could say, I think Central Arkansas is going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to win that league.
I'd say a solid A-. I would.
I agree, because I think Eastern might be better than what we thought.
Eastern almost beat Fresno.
Maine is probably going to struggle. Maine probably only win 1 or 2 games in the Colonial this year. I don't
B+,
think
A-.
I'm with you there. But that doesn't portend well as we now go into Valley play, because if you thought on the outside, like I did, maybe 5 teams could be in the playoffs, if you don't have any great non-conference wins, that negates that down because now you're going to start beating up on one another.
We're looking at 3 teams, 4 teams,
I think
maybe?
4. 4 right now. I think you could probably feel pretty good about, depending, and obviously we got to see what everything else happens.
If you're to name them, okay, NDSU, South Dakota State, SIU, and UND.
UND, I'd say.
Yep.
And maybe a chance of Youngstown.
Youngstown.
We'll see what Youngstown does. But that's probably what I'm looking at. But Mike brought this point up to me, and I think he's dead on, because the Big Sky now resembles what the Valley was, where the Big Sky is a handful of teams that are pretty good, but now we're going to start beating up on one another, and they're going to rack up some losses as conference play begins this
and
weekend.
it depends who they play, too. I mean,
right,
with
the unbalanced
schedule.
The unbalanced schedule is totally a deal in the Big Sky, where you could have a team breeze through and not have to play some of the top ones. Sacramento State had that a couple years ago. And others will have, like Idaho has both the Montanas. Granted, they have both at home, but they have to play both the Montana schools. I don't know. Sacramento State is better than I thought. They pick off Stanford, and now Sac State's not out of the mix. That's the intriguing part now as we start conference play this weekend.
Yeah, but the rest of the FCS, meh. The Coastal Athletic.
Is that where you're at, by the way? You described the FCS as
meh.
Is that what you...
Yeah. How would you describe it?
Yeah, it's probably not far off. I'd say we're probably there with how things have gone so far. I'm less on Montana than I was to start the year. I thought the Grizz meant, all right, can we see? They barely beat. I know Ferris is a good Division II team, but they had to scrape by Ferris. I mean, everyone's been singing Idaho's praises, but we'll see now that league play starts with how good they are. Weber's pretty good. But you're right. I mean, you look outside. You mentioned the CAA. I don't know.
Anybody there?
I don't know.
Hello? Anybody home?
Villanova? Delaware? How long have we been on Villanova and Delaware?
Too
Seems
long.
like a decade,
yeah, too
right?
long.
We've been waiting for each of those two teams for like a decade to do something. I don't know. I don't know on the rest of the whole league,
William
frankly.
and Mary.
Right.
I
don't know. William and Mary lost by 1 million at Bozeman. So, is Holy Cross good? I don't know. I just... That's where we're at right now. And you see the news yesterday that your friends at Chicago State now have got the funds that they're going to start an FCS football program. I know. It's like this is where FCS football is at right now, and that's not.
It's Lindenwood. Yeah. It's Chicago State. It's these teams coming
West
in.
Georgia that's coming in now. They'll be FCS next season. Yep. And gone are the days. Like you and I were watching Georgia State, remember how bad they were in FCS, and Coastal last night. That was FCS 10 years ago. It's not anymore.
And like I've said in these airwaves, I've seen the football stadium at Lindenwood, and it's smaller than Concordia.
Yeah. Yep.
It's kind of nice. I mean, it's not bad, but it's small. My goodness.
It's Division I football, baby. And then the glory days of the SoCon, which was App State and Georgia Southern and Wofford. Chattanooga was good. Those are long gone now.
What happened to Chattanooga?
Yeah, they haven't been able to put it together for a while. Like Furman, everybody believes can be really good this season. They're a top 7 ranked team in the country, but they've won 1 playoff game over the last little bit. You got to do something more than that before you're getting my attention.
Is it the portal? Have some programs just really gotten much better than the rest of the FCS?
I think, there's 2 things on the portal. One, it's taken the really good teams down a peg because their players are now moving on. And for the average teams, I think it's allowed them to get drop-down players and become better than they have been in recent years. Yes.
So it's a whole lot of average.
It's a 2-pronged deal. It's brought the top back down, and it's brought the middle up a bit. Like Incarnate Word was able to bubble up and get 30 guys and get really good.
Best of the worst of the best.
It's a hard way to describe it right now, but that's kind of where we're at. And I'm not sure. I don't know what it takes for it to get better. This might be what we have, and that's not great going forward because you look at the realignment plans that are out there for what the Mountain West wants to do with the Pac-2.
That's why we have our colleague Mike McFeely, who's doing his darndest to get this program to go FBS.
And it keeps getting slimmer by the day because the ideas keep getting wackier by the day there. I will look, as we turn back into the Valley here, you mentioned South Dakota. We'll get our full breakdown starting Monday on Bob Nielsen's team. But there's some interesting storylines here. You mentioned Aiden Bauman. His dad is a former Viking quarterback, former St. Cloud State. I mean, Bison fans of a certain generation certainly remember Todd Bauman. Aiden was a high-profile recruit, Kolpack. Craig Bowl wanted him, and Brent Vegan wanted him badly at Wyoming. Lefty, he ended up going to Iowa State. Didn't pan out there, and ended up transferring to USD. He ended up getting the starting job over Carson Camp at the end of last year, forced Camp to transfer, and I mean he has got the size. I mean there's no doubt about it. I'm really intrigued to see him play here next Saturday at the Dome.
I question his throwing ability a little bit. He's completing 61% of his passes, 38 of 62.
Yep.
But doesn't really strike me as a slinger.
It was in high school. I mean, he was able to put up some monster
numbers. Watch, I'll come here and go Buffalo. 25 of 29.
At Buffalo High School, he was very impressive and able to sling it there.
His long throw this year is 30 yards.
Yeah, they lost to Missouri State to Missouri to start the season, and then beat St. Thomas and Lamar for their 2 non-conference wins before they start Valley play. So I don't know. We'll see on what USD brings to the table. Real quick before we do a couple picks here, were you surprised at how easily Harvard dispatched of St. Thomas last week?
Yes, I watched that game for the most part.
What did you think?
What happened to St. Thomas a little bit? They just don't have playmakers. I thought their defense was pretty good against South Dakota, and then they go out to Harvard.
Harvard's good. I think they might be the best team in the Ivy League this year.
Too bad the Ivy just doesn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, there's another thing. If we're gonna start making me commissioner of all of FCS, that's the first thing I do. Is the Ivies are either in the playoffs,
declare for the playoffs, or get out.
Yes, there's no ifs, ands, or buts on that. I was surprised though. I saw that score. I know you were watching it last Saturday. I'm like, I thought St. Thomas might give them a closer game, and that's definitely not what played out last Saturday out in Boston. A couple of big games before we pick in the FCS. The Ohio State and Notre Dame on Saturday night. I am really intrigued on how that one goes between two esteemed programs getting prime time on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's going to be. Isn't Game Day going to be there?
Yes.
So the second best pregame show in all of college football.
And what about the Dion show? Does it keep going? They're getting 21 against Oregon. Colorado plus 21 at Oregon. Now, Travis Hunter's not playing. Their stud, two-way player.
And again, that's a team. What do we take? It was a good win at TCU.
Yep.
But to barely etch by Colorado State, we got to see how they do now against like a game like Oregon.
I'll take the points. I think they keep it closer than that. Although Oregon's quite good, especially at home in Eugene. That's going to be it's the unbelievable story though, Kolpack. Everybody is talking about Colorado. I mean, it's only going to get bigger for North Dakota State, frankly. If Dion's still there, that might be one of the most hyped games in Bison football history.
A friend of mine in administration at CU believes that Dion's put in $10 million into the school.
Just his presence? Holy cow. Wow.
They calculated there were $10 million at this point.
Well, you watched Game Day last week. I saw it too. Big Fox's pregame was there. They had The Rock there, for goodness sake. I mean, it was quite the scene. Quite the scene. If we see if the Cinderella still fits, if the slipper still fits for that game on Saturday against, and I say that as a Cinderella, they're ranked. Colorado's ranked going up against Oregon tomorrow afternoon. Let's pick a couple games in the Big Sky because they start conference play tomorrow. Those games are much more interesting than the Valley games that are happening. Sac State is at Idaho. That's a big game already to start conference play. Sac State off the win over Stanford. Idaho had a chance for a back-to-back FBS wins. They lost at Cal.
I'm going to take Idaho just because I'm on the Idaho. Okay. I think we've been waiting for that program to get. I mean, since the move down from FBS, it's been a struggle. But I think the Vandals are back.
Don't pick against them in the Kubitz. I like Idaho too. I'm gonna go with the Vandals there in that one. Another biggie in the Big Sky tomorrow. Montana State at Weber State. Night game in Ogden. For the Fighting Brent Vegans against Weber. What do you got there?
I'm going to go with Weber State. I'm not convinced that Montana State is
All right.
that's another tough road game. You go to Brookings, then a couple weeks later you got to go to Ogden,
and they still have to go to Moscow, and they have to go to Missoula this year. They have all toughies on the road.
And Weber, I think that was a good confidence builder going into the Unidome and
winning that
thrashing
game?
the Fighting Farleys.
All right, I'll just differ with you. I'll go with Montana State. I think unless the Weber State punter has figured out how to not snap over his own head.
That's right.
That was the debacle last year between those two teams. And Weber gave Montana State 8 points just because they couldn't snap the ball from the long snapper to the punter. Central Arkansas is back home with Abilene Christian. Just real quick on this before we go. I think they roll. You watch. I don't think they lose another game this year. I think they roll through that league.
Yeah, I'll be on that train with you.
You saw it. They got talent. If they lose a game in that league, I'd be awfully surprised. I'll just say that. It's not that the other teams are that bad. I just think they're better than the rest of the teams in that league. So that win could end up looking awfully good on the Bison resume when we get to late November. That hey,
you look at it. Who are they going to lose to?
Right. I mean, they got Abilene Christian. No, I don't think so.
And that's why I was surprised that they didn't bring it better in the first half last year. That this was their Super Bowl. And
yeah, I mean, look, Kolpack. After this, they play Southern Utah, Southeast Missouri. That'll be tough. SEMO will be a tough game, but they got that at home. Stephen F. Austin, Tarleton, North Alabama, Eastern Kentucky. That might be tough. And out Austin P. They should be favored in all but probably one of those games, I imagine. SEMO might be the only one not. And SEMO has to go to the purple and gray field for that one.
UAC.
Yeah.
UCA and the UAC.
It's another one of those dynamite leagues. You got big weekend plans without Bison football?
Oh, got a wedding. And
you do have big plans then. So, no weekend off for Kolpack.
And it's not Cole Wisniewski's wedding.
No.
Didn't get invited.
That's right. Number 31 getting married this weekend, so congrats to him. Everybody enjoy the weekend. We'll be back Monday, full week of coverage as Missouri Valley Conference play begins. It's homecoming. Pretty neat deal. The 1983 national champs are going to go into the Bison Athletic Hall of Fame. That will be a lot of fun. Part of our coverage coming up next week, leading up to USD and NDSU. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. That's the latest Kolpack and Izzo podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank.